The title of this lecture is called Biology of Acupuncture from Observation to Prediction. My name is Charles Shang. I'm on faculty at Baylor College of Medicine and American College of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. I'm a recipient of Medical Acupuncture Research Foundation Award and editorial board member of Medical Acupuncture. So the outline of this lecture includes the following. First, I will discuss the evidence supporting clinical acupuncture based on the Cochrane Review database, which is considered the gold standard of evidence-based medicine. I will specifically discuss the correlation of the effect sizes of the randomized control trials with other parameters, such as patient's age and the number of acupuncture points used in the trial. And then I will discuss the biological plausibility of acupuncture and the implications of the organizer model of acupuncture on clinical acupuncture. It's actually to explain what we already know about the effect sizes and its correlation with other parameters, which actually can be predicted from the organizer model. And the organizer model can also provide guidance on how to improve the efficacy of acupuncture based on the biology of acupuncture. Near the end, I will emphasize the power of unification and the prediction of the modern biology of acupuncture. And the content of this lecture is mostly based on two publications, and that's listed at the bottom of this slide. Acupuncture is a technique of stimulating specific anatomical points in the body for therapeutic purposes. The stimulation modality can be quite diverse. It can be mechanical, such as needle or cupping. It can also be moxibustion, infrared radiation, or laser, and electricity. So based on the standard nomenclature published by the World Health Organization, there are about 400 acupuncture points in human body, most of which are connected by 20 meridians. The distribution is different from known conventional physiological systems. Some studies suggest that acupuncture points have high electric conductance and high density of gap junctions, so this is not fully established yet. Now we're going to discuss the evidence supporting clinical acupuncture. We first need to discuss a concept in evidence-based medicine regarding clinical trials, and this concept is called effect size. It is a generic term for the estimate of effect of treatment from a clinical trial. It's usually defined as the difference in means between the intervention and the control groups, divided by the pooled standard deviation of both groups. So it is a ratio without a specific unit. So the effect is usually considered small if the effect size is between 0.2 to 0.5, and it's considered moderate if it's between 0.5 to 0.8, and the effect is considered large if it's more than 0.8. So this is a table based on about a dozen Cochrane reviews on acupuncture clinical trials. And it suggests a trend. that when relatively few acupoints were used in clinical trials, the effect size tend to be large. In the case of treating acute low back pain, only 1 point, small intestine 3, was used in the trial, and the effect size was 3.52. And in treating dysmenorrhea, only spleen 6 was used, 1 point, and the effect size is 0.7. And in treating breech presentation in pregnancy, only 1 point, bladder 67 was used, and the effect size was large, 2.04. But when a higher number of acupuncture points were used in trial in the treatment of headache, the effect size was only 0.23. And even for treating the same condition, in the case of treating osteoarthritis, when 6 points were used, the effect size was 2.7. But when up to 15 points were used, the effect size was down to 0.28. Another trend seems to suggest that the effect size tends to be on the high side when the patients are young or middle age. In the case of dysmenorrhea or breech presentation or acute low back pain. But for frail elderly, in the case of dysphagia after stroke, the effect size was small, only 0.41. And this is actually can be predicted and explained by the biology of acupuncture, which I will explain later in the lecture. So now I'm going to switch gear and discuss the basic acupuncture research. And because there have been a lot of studies and a lot of different models published in this field, I'm going to focus only on the model which has met the gold standard of science. So the gold standard of science is defined as the following. A valid scientific theory should have predictions which have multiple independent confirmations. Which of the following is true? Acupuncture research has led to a scientific theory, which choice A has multiple independently confirmed predictions and corollaries in acupuncture research. Choice B has multiple independently confirmed predictions and corollaries in conventional biomedical research. So if a theory or model can achieve both A and B, and that is basically a successful integration of acupuncture research with modern biomedical science. Choice C is that it enables a college graduate who is good at math and conventional anatomy to figure out the distribution of a large number of acupuncture points and some meridians before learning the traditional text or chart of acupuncture. Choice D is that it can correctly predict and guide clinical acupuncture. Choice E It suggests a unified biological basis of meridian system and chakra system. So if a model or theory can achieve A, B, C, D, and E, that would be really considered ideal or holy grail of acupuncture research. And the answer is that all the following are true. So the acupuncture research has led to a scientific theory which has multiple independently confirmed predictions and corollaries in both acupuncture research and conventional biomedical research. It enables a college graduate who's good at math, it's mostly the basic concepts of differential geometry, and good at conventional anatomy to figure out the distribution of a large number of acupuncture points and some meridians before learning the traditional text or chart of acupuncture. The theory can correctly predict and guide clinical acupuncture. It also suggests a unified biological basis of meridian system and chakra system. So I will show you the evidence to support these claims in the rest of the lecture. There are several challenges in basic acupuncture research. One is the distribution of acupuncture points. And the key example is the auricular acupuncture point. So meta-analysis have shown that auricular acupuncture is effective in the treatment of a variety of conditions, including insomnia and smoking cessation. So an auricle, that is the external ear, has no important nerves or blood vessels or lymphatics or complex connective tissue planes, and no significant physiological function other than sound collection. It nevertheless has the highest density of acupuncture points. Another challenge is the long-lasting effects of acupuncture. The two randomized controlled trials have shown that the relief of migraine lasted more than a year after the cessation of acupuncture treatment. So this is thousands of times longer than the physiological half-life of endorphin. Similar long-term benefits have been shown in randomized controlled trials on the acupuncture treatment of shoulder pain, back pain, primary dysmenorrhea, spinal cord injuries, urinary urgency, and osteoarthritis. This long-lasting effect is almost non-existent in conventional neurostimulation therapy using transient neuromodulation, such as sacral nerve stimulation. Another challenge in research is the non-specific subtle activation of acupuncture points. Meta-analyses have shown that therapeutic effects of acupuncture can be achieved by a variety of stimuli. And this diversity of stimulation modalities is unparalleled in conventional nerve stimulation techniques. Non-noxious stimuli such as non-thermal low-intensity laser irradiation at acupuncture points, for example with power of 5 milliwatts or less, it's been shown that such stimulation does not cause local peripheral nerve excitation or collagen fiber reorganization. And nevertheless, can still cause local intracellular calcium oscillation of the tissue and also extensive systemic effects. And these effects do not seem to have any apparent survival or evolutionary benefits. So these observations naturally lead to the following question. Why do acupuncture points exist? So why would the subtle stimulation at those points cause such extensive systemic effects that have no apparent evolutionary or survival benefits? Why such phenomenon exist? What is the origin and intrinsic function of those acupuncture points? So here is another multiple choice question regarding the biological plausibility of acupuncture. So which of the following biological entity is most likely to react to subtle stimuli with long-lasting systemic effects? Choice A is peripheral nerve, choice B is lymphatics, choice C is organizer, which is a small group of cells that control the growth of a much larger region in embryogenesis. Choice D is connective tissue, choice E is blood vessel. So the most likely answer is C, organizer, which I will explain. So here is a diagram of an organizer. So as I mentioned earlier, so an organizer is a small group of cells which control the growth and differentiation of a larger region in morphogenesis. And this was first discovered by Hans Spemann, for which he received the first Nobel Prize in the field of developmental biology in 1935. So on the right side is a diagram of an organizer. So the brown triangle at the bottom of the diagram is the organizer for the notochord of this embryo. And the notochord is a precursor of a spine. And out of this organizer, those a brown dot signifies the morphogen. In this case, it's a sonic hedgehog. So morphogen is a signaling molecule or ion which forms gradient in growth control and morphogenesis around the organizers. So in this case, the organizers are singular points of morphogen gradient, and singular points are known to be prone to subtle perturbation. And that indeed has been confirmed in the case of organizer. So organizer is sensitive to subtle perturbations and can be induced for long-term growth control activity merely by subtle mechanical injury with needles, pretty much like acupuncture type of stimulation. And this has been observed by Hartfretter and many others. Hartfretter actually used to work for Hans Spemann in Germany. Now let's talk about singularity in some detail. So singularity is a type of discontinuity. It indicates abrupt transition from one state to another, like a tipping point. And singularity can be in 0 dimension, like a point. It can be 1 dimension, like a line, such as a national border. It can also be a surface, such as a skin, that separates the organic body from outside. For example, in math, when a simple function such as y equals 1 over x, so y is the reciprocal of x. So when x is 0, that is a singular point for this function. So as x is getting closer to 0, y gets really big. It's approaching infinity. So as x is getting close to 0, a tiny change in x causes a huge change in y. And that is a feature of singularity. So example in physics would be like a freezing point or boiling point. So at those points, a tiny change in temperature causes a huge change in the property of the matter, a phase transition. Another example is a critical mass for nuclear chain reaction. So a tiny change in mass around near the critical mass can cause a huge change in the matter, a nuclear chain reaction. Example in geopolitics is a national border. So as one across the border, just a tiny change in the physical distance will result in abrupt change in the legal system and in economy. So James Clerk Maxwell, one of the greatest physicists in the 19th century, had the following comment on singular points. He stated that every existence above a certain rank has its singular points. The higher the rank, the more of them. At these points, influences whose physical magnitude is too small to be taken account of by a finite being may produce results of the greatest importance. All great results produced by human endeavor depend on taking advantage of these singular points or the singular states when they occur. And I will explain later that acupuncture is one of the human endeavor which take advantage of the singular points in our body. So a key insight in biology of acupuncture is that the acupuncture points originate from organizers. So here's a diagram of an organizer called blaster pore, which is indicated by the red arrow. And this is actually the classic organizer that Hans Spemann worked on, for which he got the Nobel Prize. So it is a macroscopic singular point of morphogen gradient and bioelectric field, which serves as cues for the growth control. And there's a a steady current at the blast pole that persists after the early embryogenesis. And this was actually first predicted by the organizer model of acupuncture research, and was later on confirmed independently by developmental biologists. So this is the first time that basic acupuncture research correctly predicted research findings in conventional biomedical science, signify a successful integration of acupuncture with modern biomedical science. Here is preliminary data on the electromagnetic field around the acupuncture point of a human hand. So here, as you can see, around certain acupuncture points, like the pericardium 8, small intestine 3, and heart 8 on a human hand, shows a stronger electromagnetic field. Using the instrument, actually it's for the MEG, the magnetoencephalogram machine, but it was repurposed for measuring the electromagnetic field of a human hand, and suggest that the magnetic field is stronger on those points, consistent with the stronger electromagnetic field shown earlier around organizers. And the location of those points is somewhat different from the distribution of arteries, the major arteries and major nerves on the human hand. We see many common features shared by acupuncture points and organizers in growth control. So both of them have high electric conductance and high electric current density, high metabolic activity, and high density of gap junctions. Both can be activated by non-specific stimuli, such as a needle prick, with long-lasting systemic effects. They also share common features in distribution. So superficial organizers are at the extreme points of curvature of body surface, such as convex points, or locally concave or saddle points, such as a zone of polarizing activity. Almost all the extreme points of the body surface curvature are also acupuncture points. Examples of convex points are like the fingertips, or the tips of the toes, the tip of nipple, the tip of nose, that is GV25. concave or saddle points such as kidney 1, small intestine 19, triple energizer 21, gallbladder 20, gallbladder 30, bladder 40, heart 1, small intestine 18, bladder 1, conception vessel 8, that is navel. So based on the growth control model, a college graduate who is familiar with the basic concepts of differential geometry, the concepts of extreme point of curvature, and familiar with the conventional anatomy, can basically figure out the distribution of a large number of acupuncture points before learning the chart of acupuncture, like the tips of nose, tips of the fingertips of the antecubital fossa, axilla, the heart 1. Those are obvious points of organizers, and based on this theory, they should be the acupuncture points. So based on the organizer model of acupuncture, it is easy to understand why the external ear has the highest density of acupuncture points. Because it has the most complex morphology, the most convoluted shape of the human body surface, and therefore it is expected to have the highest density of organizers, and therefore highest density of acupuncture points. Auricle or external ear exemplifies the interconnection of growth control. Auricular morphology is a sentinel of malformation in other organs. Its malformation has been observed in Turner syndrome, Potter syndrome, Treacher-Collins syndrome, Patel syndrome, Edwards syndrome, etc. Numerous congenital malformation syndromes. In a pediatric textbook, it has been recommended that whenever a newborn is noticed to have a malformation of the external ear, then a clinician should start to search for malformation in other organs. So through the interconnection within the growth control network, stimulating auricular acupuncture points can potentially regulate the function and growth control of other organs. As we discussed earlier, so organizer is a singular point of local bioelectric field and also a local morphogen gradient at the macroscopic level. So it is a point of discontinuity. So it indicates abrupt transition from one state to another, and therefore often sensitive to subtle perturbation. As mentioned before, the singularity can be a point, but it can also be a line or a boundary. So in this case, it's called separatrix. So separatrix is a linear singularity, indicates abrupt transition from one domain to another. So it is an interface or boundary between two different domains. So as predicted, the boundaries in growth control have high electric inductance, and high density of gap junctions become restricted at discrete boundaries during development, leading to the subdivision of the embryo into communication compartment domains. The meridians originate from the boundaries in growth control. So according to the ancient Chinese medicine scripture called Inner Classic, meridians distribute along the boundaries between muscles. And this is confirmed by finding 80% of acupuncture points on human arm are at the connective tissue planes between muscles. Trigger points, which mostly overlap with acupuncture points, also locate at the borders of muscles. Both meridians and the growth control boundaries have been shown to have high electric conductance and high density of gap junctions. So based on the organizer model, a person who is good at math and conventional anatomy can figure out the distribution of a large number of acupuncture points and some meridians before learning the traditional text or chart of acupuncture. So acupuncture points, since they originate from organizers, they're expected to distribute at the extreme point of surface curvature or interface between different tissues. So therefore, high density of acupuncture points are expected at the external ears, face, hands, and feet, as mentioned earlier. The meridians and separatrices are expected to distribute along the boundaries between different body domains, such as axis of symmetry, that is a governor vessel and conception vessel. Also, like gallbladder meridian, part of it is between trapezius and sternocleidomastoid muscles. Part of the lung meridian is between biceps and the brachioradialis muscles. Part of the pericardium meridian is between palmaris longus and the flexor carpi radialis muscle. So growth control is the foundation of all physiological systems. So in biogenesis, all the physiological systems are developed through a growth control system, that is a system of a network of organizers. So in evolution, growth control is a primary function of all multicellular organisms. Its genetic blueprint served as a template from which the neural system evolved, and consequently it overlaps and interacts with the other systems. So by stimulating or causing perturbation of a growth control system, you can influence or you can regulate many other physiological systems. And the growth control signal transduction is embedded in the activity of the function-based physiological systems. So the regulation of many physiological processes is through growth control mechanisms such as hypertrophy, hyperplasia, atrophy, and apoptosis. And many of the signaling molecules in physiology are also growth control factors. So here's a diagram illustrating that the growth control system is the foundation of all the other function-based physiological systems. So all the other physiological systems are developed through a network of organizers during embryogenesis. So one obvious corollary from the organizer model of acupuncture is that acupuncture should have extensive growth control effects. And indeed, this has been confirmed by many research groups. Acupuncture regulates the secretion of various growth factors such as vascular endothelial growth factor, basic fibroblast growth factor, nerve growth factor, TGF-beta, interleukin 6, and also the expression of a variety of growth control genes such as C4, BCL2, BAX, FAS, FASL, and CMYC. Acupuncture has been shown to regulate apoptosis, regeneration, differentiation, and cell proliferation of various tissues. And the classic neurohumoral factors induced by acupuncture, such as endorphin, adenosine, and serotonin, also have growth control effects. For example, the endorphins can stimulate epithelial cells growth, and the serotonin can stimulate endothelial cell growth. So many predictions and corollaries of the organizer model have been confirmed in conventional biomedical research. For example, the role of singularity and separatrix in morphogenesis has been confirmed by research publications in high-profile journals in Nature and Science. The high electric inductance and high density of gap junctions as organizers such as blastopore and zone of polarizing activity has been confirmed by multiple research groups. A high density of gap junctions has been confirmed to distribute as separatrices or boundaries at body surface, and this is likely the origin of meridians. And many research groups have confirmed that some morphogens and organizers continue to exist and function in adult after embryogenesis. This organizer model of acupuncture also has confirmed predictions for clinical acupuncture. In randomized control trials, acupuncture has shown efficacy in treating growth control-related disorders such as inflammatory bowel disease, spinal cord injuries, and low sperm quality. Acupuncture points distribute along boundaries between body domains and muscles, coinciding with the connective tissue planes between body domains and muscles. So the organizer model predicted that the acupuncture effect is somewhat similar to a process called simulated annealing. So the goal of a treatment is to relieve certain disorder which corresponds to reaching a certain local optimum in simulated annealing. So perturbations such as acupuncture can lead to a local optimization or global optimization or self-organizing activity of a physiological system. So this is done by shifting a system from a suboptimal state to a better state. So the self-organizing effect of the system during this annealing process is limited and is related to the person's general health and age in the case of acupuncture. So here's a diagram showing the effect of acupuncture in patients with no or few comorbidities. So in this diagram, the left side is a diseased state, and the right side is a global optimum, or the normal state. And because the patient has only one problem, so a different acupuncture treatment can often lead to the same effect of normalization. They will all reach the global optimum relatively easily. So this is a diagram to illustrate the effect of acupuncture in patients with multiple comorbidities. So different acupuncture treatment in patients with multiple comorbidities can lead to a different result. And in those patients, the intended goal of treatment can be different from the so-called global optimum. So when you give acupuncture treatment to shake the patient out of the diseased state, it can settle at an intended goal of treatment, but also if you use a lot of acupuncture points, it may more likely to settle at a so-called global optimum, but it's different from the intended goal of treatment. And that is why that in patients with multiple comorbidities, especially in frail elderly patients, that the effect of acupuncture is often mixed, not as good as in the young, healthier patients. As I mentioned in the previous slide, using the Cochrane Review database. So the organizer model and the simulated annealing effect of acupuncture suggests an inverse relationship between the number of acupuncture points used and the effect sizes in randomized control trials. So the perturbation at organizers, that is acupuncture point, can lead to a higher local self-organizing activity compared to perturbation at placebo control points. But such difference diminishes as the number of perturbed points increase due to the wider distribution of the limited self-organizing capacity. And perturbation at too many points can cause a generalized, weak self-organizing effect, but dissipate the local self-organizing effect, and therefore compromise the intended goal of treatment. And this is especially true when patient has multiple comorbidities. So this is the same slide which I showed earlier. That's based on the Cochrane Review database on acupuncture controlled trials. And the organizer model can explain why that when relatively few acupuncture points are used on relatively healthy young patients, the effect size tend to be large or moderate, while when more acupuncture points are used in frail elderly patients, the effect size of the acupuncture tends to be on the low side. And you can also compare for treating headache. That is, when 3 points are used in treating tension headache, the effect size is 0.71, while when 5 to 12 points are used in treating headache, the effect size was down to 0.23. Similarly, as the treatment for osteoarthritis, again, when relatively few acupuncture points were used, the effect size is larger compared to a lot more acupuncture points we used up to 15. The effect size it was smaller. So this is to review the effect of age and comorbidities on acupuncture efficacy. So the acupuncture clinical trial results are often mixed when patients are old, frail, and have multiple comorbidities, as shown in the Cochrane Review database. As the comorbidities increase, the number of local optima increases, and as a result, the intended local optimum of the acupuncture trial is often different from the global optimum of the patient. So few acupuncture providers will be able to select the right acupuncture points to achieve a focused self-organizing effect and reach the intended local optimum. So essentially, acupuncture becomes harder in those patients. And therefore, a predetermined intended therapeutic effect in the trial in frail elderly will be difficult to repeat, and therefore the effect size tends to be on the low side as a result. This slide is a review of the confirmed predictions and corollaries on clinical acupuncture based on the organizer model. One confirmed prediction is that the efficacy of acupuncture has been shown to be inversely correlated to the disease chronicity, severity, and the patient's age, as I mentioned before. So this is a difference between acupuncture and many of the conventional medicines. So in conventional medicine, a lot of times a specific inhibitor is used to block certain signal transduction pathway, such as a beta blocker or ACE inhibitor. And when this inhibitor is used, its effect often gets stronger as a person gets older, and you actually have to sometimes decrease the dose and use it more carefully. But in acupuncture, it is often to activate the body's self-organizing capacity or self-regulatory capacity. So those capacity also gets weaker as a person gets older. So the effect of acupuncture tends to get weaker in frail elderly. And the effect is often bidirectional normalizing effect. For example, when you stimulate the stomach 36, the same type of stimulation can speed up the bowel movement in a person with constipation, but can slow down the bowel movement in a person with diarrhea. So it is a bidirectional normalizing effect. So the advantage of acupuncture is that its side effect is less compared to conventional medicine, and this has been demonstrated in numerous randomized control trials. But then the specificity also is often less than that of the conventional medicine. And it becomes more of an issue in a person with multiple comorbidities. So acupuncture are most likely to demonstrate positive efficacy as early treatment in patients with few comorbidities, relatively good general health, and with efficient use of acupuncture points. So for example, in acupuncture treatment of migraine, tension headache, acute dental pain, labor, that is shortening the duration of labor, nausea and vomiting, pelvic and back pain in pregnancy. So in those conditions, typically the patients are relatively young and relatively healthy. But in contrast, clinical trials using multiple acupuncture points in frail elderly with multiple comorbidities often showed mixed results. Implications on clinical acupuncture based on the organizer model. So increasing the number of acupuncture points used in treatment tends to decrease the specificity of the therapeutic effects. This is not a big issue if the patient is relatively young and has only one problem, such as 30-year-old with migraine, or a pregnant woman with pelvic pain, or morning sickness. So even a provider uses more acupuncture points than necessary, you may still achieve the intended therapeutic effect. But if too many acupuncture points are used on a frail elderly with multiple comorbidities, then usually it's much harder to achieve the therapeutic effect, as I mentioned earlier. The low risk of side effects is at the expense of the specificity in acupuncture in comparison to the conventional medicine. The more comorbidities the patients have, the less predictable the therapeutic effects will be. Frail patients tend to have weak and short-lasting therapeutic effects due to weakened self-organizing capacity. So their treatment should have higher frequency and longer duration in comparison to the treatment of healthier patients. So one may consider using the transcutaneous electrical acupoint stimulation, which is more convenient and less costly for patients if you want to use more frequently and with a longer duration. Acupuncture is most likely to show positive efficacy when few skillfully chosen acupuncture points are used on relatively healthy young patients. One corollary from the organizer model of acupuncture is that the organizers should exist not only at the surface of the body, but also in the interior of the body to maintain proper growth control in adult. The organizers have a feature that can be useful to track where they are. That is, the organizers tend to have higher density of stem cells than the surrounding tissue. And one of the least differentiated stem cell, or the primordial stem cell, is called the germ cell. So a germ cell is basically like an embryonic stem cell that can differentiate into all three germ layers of the embryo, including the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. And the distribution of the germ cell can be deduced based on the locations of the primary tumor, the germ cell tumor. We know the distribution of the primary tumors of a certain cell type reflects the distribution of its normal counterpart. For example, we can basically show the distribution of the sympathetic nervous system using the locations of the primary tumor of the pheochromocytoma. And the distribution pattern of the germ cell tumor shows a midline and a paraxial distribution, such as the existence of under-differentiated germ cells, which may be highly interconnected in the normal state as part of the signal transduction and the growth control system, and that is the inner meridian system. And this pattern resembles another well-known system called the chakra system. And this suggests that the meridian system in acupuncture and the chakra system may have a unified biological basis. So here's a diagram showing the similarities between the chakra system and the germ cell distribution. So the germ cell tumor tends to distribute along the midline of the body and concentrate at 7 locations: the pineal gland, the base of the skull, the thyroid, the mediastinum, retroperitoneal region, the gonads, and the sacrococcygeal region, which is similar to the 7 major chakras. So this suggests that the major chakras may be the central part, the least differentiated part of the growth control system, while the meridians and the acupuncture points more at the periphery of the growth control system and are more differentiated in terms of stem cells. And the two share a common biological basis. So in summary, while many details await further research, the puzzle of acupuncture has been solved at a fundamental level based on the gold standard of science. And the organizer model of acupuncture has demonstrated that it has multiple independently confirmed predictions and corollaries in both acupuncture research and conventional biomedical research. So this signifies a success in integration of acupuncture with modern biomedical sciences. This model also enables a person who is good at math, mainly the basic concepts of differential geometry, and also good at conventional anatomy, can essentially figure out the distribution of a large number of acupuncture points and some meridians just based on the model alone before learning the traditional acupuncture. And to my knowledge, no other model has been able to achieve this. This organizer model can also correctly predict and guide clinical acupuncture. The model suggests a unified biological basis of meridian system and chakra system. So many people have contributed to this line of research. I would like to thank Dr. Middleton Gibbons, a mathematician, also my mother, Thuyanan, Dr. Goliano from Stanford, Dr. Frederick Kyle and John Kell, Dr. Maria do Distro from Brazil, Dr. Michael Levine, Dr. Jim Lee, Dr. McCosey, Dr. Margaret Neeser from Boston, Dr. Stig Omar from Sweden, Dr. Magnus Low from Taiwan, Dr. Shenzhen Su from Peking University, Dr. Neil Saiz from NYU, Dr. Sangwan from Boston, Dr. Nucitelli from San Francisco, Dr. Zara Saeed from Stanford, and Isabel Yung from Stanford. Thank you very much.